getting back to the conversation around football, and a lot of times during the offseason we get into the rankings. A lot of these teams changed. A lot of their foundation and star players have changed. Already we've seen a lot of that this offseason. It's been one of the more crazier off seasons that I've seen just in my time following the NFL extensively. So I've decided to bring you guys a power rankings. I'm splitting it up into conferences just because of the length of each segment and wanting to explain my picks for these rankings. So the first segment is going to be based on the NFC, ranking them from 16 to first. And then in the last segment, stick around to find out the AFC rankings. So that being said, or actually before I get into the NFC rankings one last time, please remember, if you want to have a question, ask me a question, make a comment during today's live show, use the tip and donations link on the screen right now at GSMCPodcast.net with any questions. The power rankings, I'm sure, will bring a lot of questions and comments to the show. So if you want to say anything, use that tip and donations link to have your question pop up here in my chat box. I can read it out loud during the live show. Have a conversation, make it more interactive. It's always better when you guys are able to do that, and it's always a big help, and we appreciate it every time you guys are able to use the link, once again, at gsmcpodcast.net. But now, finally, the power rankings, starting with the AFC, or NFC, I should say. Starting from 16, I have the Carolina Panthers. No real surprise there. They have been trending positively. They added Deontay Johnson, added Robert Hunt on the offensive line. Have some pieces there. You want to believe in the potential of Bryce Young as a first overall pick. So they still have that. Dave Canales comes over from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They had a good season offensively. So all of that could mean more positives, at least in the development of Bryce Young. But, they finished doing 15 last year. They have a lot of new in this season, so that usually doesn't lead to immediate success, especially with a young team that they have. They're ranked 16. I don't think a lot of people have issues with that. Moving on to 15, the Arizona Cardinals added Mack Wilson in the offseason, Jonah Williams to help that offensive line. No real wide receivers on the roster right now because of the trade with Marquise Brown, or actually signing Marquise Brown, the Chiefs did from free agency. The Cardinals lost him. They didn't re-sign him. So they really don't have a great wide receiver. You think of the receivers that they had, Larry Fitzgerald, DeAndre Hopkins at one point more recently. They've always had one. And now you look around their roster, they don't have that eye-popping talent that brings in attention. On defense, they have Kaiser White, Budda Baker, players like that, but you need someone on offense to have any sort of chance in an NFC, especially their division that's very competitive. So they need to bolster their offense a lot more. James Conner's a nice piece. Obviously, Kyler Murray played very well to end the season. So that's positive, but they need a receiver. Lucky enough for them, they're picking number 4. So if they decide to trade it or take Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, they really don't lose whichever the decision they take. They're in a decent spot, but last year, 4-13, they need a couple more pieces other than a receiver, so not really looking great this season, but I like the way they're trending. They're going to be 15. Moving on to 14, I have the New York Giants. Yet they lost a lot. I've been on the Giants hate bandwagon a lot. It might seem recently with how I talked about them losing Saquon, Xavier McKinney, but positively, they added Brian Burns. John Runyon is a big one, I think. He's a great offensive line player for the Packers, and he's still very young. To sign him was huge to finally try and solve that offensive line problem that they have. They brought in Devin Singletary. I'm not going to say he replaces Saquon, but they have him on the roster now to at least fill that running back hole that they have instead of having nobody. But you talk about, again, you look at those big losses. Saquon, one of the best, if not the best running back in the league. Xavier McKinney, a very young, good, promising, free safety, whatever you want to call him. He's now on the Packers. They didn't re-sign him. On offense, just a lack of proven weapons that you can rely on for Daniel Jones, who is, again, another expensive question mark that fans and analysts want to have about him. So a lot of question marks, a big year for Brian Daboll and general manager Joe Schoen. They're picking 6, so that could help a little bit, potentially trade that, get more pieces, or get a franchise quarterback to get people to buy in to something exciting and new. A lot of options for them, but the losses are more significant. They're going to be the 3rd worst team in the NFL and the NFC. Moving on to the Commanders, sticking in the NFC East. I like the pieces that they added, a lot of them on the defensive side of the ball. New head coach, new general manager. The biggest thing is no quarterback. They're picking number 2, so you expect it to be a quarterback. No pass rushers either, really, on that defensive line, so that's something they can add. They added Dante Fowler, but you need a star really at that position like most of the best teams do. They need to still add some pieces. They were 4-13 last year in a division that's normally very competitive, but I think they've done a lot to kind of push past that threshold and compete more closely than I think a lot of people will give them credit for this season with the Eagles, definitely with the Cowboys, and maybe finally they'll beat the Giants this year. So they have all the pieces around them, but they just need that quarterback. So right now they'll stick at 13, but I liked what they did so far in this offseason. Then we have the Chicago Bears. A very good job by Ryan Poles, in my opinion, this free agency and through trades, trading Justin Fields, getting Keenan Allen, bringing in DeAndre Swift, Gerald Everett from the Los Angeles Chargers. I think they've done a good job fortifying that offense, but questions around their offensive line. They could get help at number 9 if they choose to do that. How would it all play out? Really with Caleb Williams, because you expect him to go number 1 at this point. How will it all fit together and mesh, and how will all these pieces really gain chemistry together? That's still the biggest question mark. Matt Eberflus is a defensive coach, so how will he really help the development of Caleb Williams and this talented offense? Those sort of questions, big questions, have them ranked at number 12. Moving into 11, I have the Minnesota Vikings. Good free agents on defense, good additions on the defensive side of the ball. Aaron Jones is big for them, adds a good star running back to that offense to complement Justin Jefferson. TJ Hawkinson is one of the best tight ends in my opinion. They have to figure out still the contract situation with Justin Jefferson. But other than that, this offense is very talented. Jordan Addison is a very talented young receiver. I mentioned the defense, adding Jonathan Grenard, Alex Van Ginkel, some of the pieces that were solid starting pieces on other teams, contending teams in the playoffs. So adding them, I think it's great. They just need a quarterback. If they trade up, that would be great for them. But how much are you giving up? Still some big questions. You don't hope they lose Justin Jefferson, but that's still a possibility. They're ranked at number 11. Moving into now the top 10. It got kind of dicey from here. I had some issues ranking them, but at number 10, I have the New Orleans Saints. Good players still. They have Derek Carr, average, good starting quarterback. Chris Olave is a great player that they drafted. Their defense is still good. The thing about them is that, it's starting to age a little bit. Demario Davis is still playing, one of their best players on defense. They have Tyrann Mathieu, Marshawn Lattimore. They have a reputation of being a tough, competitive team. It just seems they're always in salary cap issues and problems. It's going to come back to bite them at some point. They haven't really added major additions to this team, so they're kind of teetering around at the midpoint. I'm going to give them 10. Number 9 is the Seattle Seahawks. I love the hire of Mike McDonald from the Baltimore Ravens to bring to life that defense a little bit more. They added Jerome Baker on that side of the ball. Hankins as well. They still just have questions around their quarterback. Is Geno Smith really that long-term option? Edge rushers, they don't really have too many. And offensive line, their general manager has said is the big glaring issue. So there's still a lot of question marks around them, but they always still seem to be in competitive games, in games with the 49ers, the Rams, the Eagles last year. They beat the Eagles, so they always also have just a reputation of playing teams, playing up to the level of competition. I have them ranked at number 9. Number 8, one of the revolutions of this free agency, the Atlanta Falcons. Raheem Morris, I'm glad to see he finally got an opportunity as an official head coach. He was the interim head coach with the Falcons before. Now he's the official new head coach. Kirk Cousins, obviously, is the big one. Darnell Mooney is another underrated signing. They just desperately need defensive help. They have no pass rushers at all to rush, bring any sort of trouble to the opposing quarterbacks. Their secondaries are all right with Jesse Bates and A.J. Terrell, but they need to address that most likely in the draft, hopefully in free agency. If they do that, they're going to be very competitive, but because of that, I still have them ranked as the 8th best team in the NFC. 7 is the Dallas Cowboys. Questionable, maybe they should be higher. I don't think so because I've just been on them for losing so many pieces and not adding anybody to compensate for those big losses that they have on the defensive side of the ball, where they struggled majorly last year. They lost all their players last year that they had last year, and now they expect still to be in a similar situation. I don't see it. They have issues with Dak Prescott's contract. CeeDee Lamb needs an extension. Micah Parsons will need an extension eventually. They're ranked as number 7. They're on the decline for me. Number 6, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They got most of their major players back. Another year under Todd Bowles, and with that core group of guys, they surprised a lot of people last year. I think they're only going to build on that. Baker seemed to finally turn that corner and be one of the top 12, 15 quarterbacks in the league. Godwin, Evans, you know what you're going to get out of them. I have them ranked as the 6th best team. Then you get into the top 5. The Los Angeles Rams are top 5 for me because you had the surprise of that rookie class that they drafted last year. Puka goes without saying what he did. Kyron Williams was overshadowed with what Puka did, but he was very, very good for them. On defense, they had some nice rookies, add a lot to their defense side of the ball, Byron Young being one of them. And they have young, exciting players, but they were just blindsided by that Aaron Donald retirement. You have to consider Matthew Stafford's age and maybe trying to find a long-term replacement for him. But I still think he's got a good amount left in the tank. I think with all their young talent and experience with McVay and Stafford, I think they're top 5 for sure in the NFC. Then number 4, I have the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love, I was a big fan. He really surprised me with what he did last year. He looked great. He just grew and developed as every week went on. Josh Jacobs is a good addition to their offense. A lot of young wide receivers that made their impact as well. Their offensive line played better than most people give them credit. They just have, that youth factor. Having played in playoff games, they impressed last season, but trying to get back there year after year is tougher than a lot of people may think. So that's something they have to maneuver around with with Jordan Love. But I think the potential's there. They've shown flashes competing with the 49ers. I think they're only going to get better, honestly. Arguably the best team in the NFC North. That's something to monitor, but I love what they did. They're number 4 for me. Top 3, I have the Eagles as the 3rd best team. The only reason why, because defensively you saw how bad they were, how much they struggled in that secondary. Pass rusher was an issue. We talked about that in the first segment, how they only have 2 starters, and then the depth behind that is a little questionable. Their offense is otherworldly. It's probably the best offense in the league, but they have to try and stop the other team from scoring. That give and get from their offense and defense is going to be huge for them. When the offense has off days, can the defense stop somebody when they're going up against the Lions, the Packers? That's yet to be seen. So for me, defense, they have to improve. Maybe they'll jump into top 2 or best team, but right now I have them sitting at number 3. At number 2, I have the Detroit Lions. To me, the best offensive line in the NFL. They were able to keep both of their coordinators, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, which is huge for them because they were young on both sides of the ball. Keeping them for another year is big to build that chemistry, build that reputation on both sides of the ball. They had a great rookie class. Need to figure out the contract situation with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think it's the best situation right now, trending in the best direction out of any wide receiver. I expect it to get done. They just need secondary help with the whole Cam Sutton situation going on. It takes away one more body from that secondary and safety after they lost CJ. If they address those two spots, they're really going to be pushing the number 1 team, which still remains the San Francisco 49ers. They have the best overall team. Coaching, scheme, McCaffrey, Debo, it goes without saying, really. I expect them to still be in number 1 seed next year, repeat what they did this year. They have to get over the hump and try to win a Super Bowl with this team. They can't just waste all this talent that they have without winning a Super Bowl. But right now, they still sit as the best team in the NFC East for me in my power rankings. That's the NFC side of things. I'm going to go to a quick break right now. And the other side, I'm going to talk about the AFC and how that all broke down in my power rankings. So that's coming up after this break. You're not going to want to miss it on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.